2, 1.
Welcome to Made for More Living.
One small step for man.
With Johnny Jennings.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
The fastest and most exciting hour of news, events, and real estate in Northern California.
And this is a fact that was proved.
Powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Get ready. Here we go.
So on today's show, we have a very special guest. Honestly, one of the smartest people I know in business and in life. And so we are so thrilled to have you on here today, Brandon Naramore.
Thank you, Johnny. Again, I would say the same about you. Dear friend you've become ever since we started working together. Huge honor to be here.
Well, thank you. You'd be saying it, but you'd be lying. You'd be lying.
Not true.
So how I met Brandon, because people are always like curious, because I smoke cigars. And they're like, why do you do it? And this is, honestly, you are probably like the best example of why I smoke cigars. You and I reconnected in a cigar lounge in Loomis and had nothing to do but smoke cigars for the next 90 minutes. And so we had bought the cigars and we just ended up talking. And, out of that, a friendship grew. And so that is one of my favorite things about smoking cigars are the people you meet in those cigar lounges. Have you had similar experiences?
Well, I would say, that was a magical day. As there are some friends, we do a thing called Hooky Friday once a month over in Loomis. And then sure enough, you come up to me and say, I think we've been to a party together, or we knew somebody mutually. And then from that, the relationship formed. But
Yep.
I've found working with CEOs, everyone that's an entrepreneur that I know most of the time have ADD. And so for some reason, having a cigar in their hand calms them down, focuses them, and you have some of the most life-changing conversations you can imagine. Every problem you can solve often happens in business when you're having a cigar.
That's so true. I never thought about that before, but you're right. Like if it was a different setting, I'd be looking at my phone. I'd be, getting up doing stuff. But for whatever reason, that cigar moment is like a sacred moment where I'm like not looking at anything.
Well, I just naturally, again, we're so anxious about so many things. And as an entrepreneur, you have so many different businesses you're focusing on or opportunities, we get easily distracted.
Yeah.
And I think personally, the nicotine focuses your mind just like caffeine does. And from that, this conversation emerges and they start to really think in a unique way about problems they've been facing or avoiding and how to solve them through creative and complex conversation.
And what's crazy too is the you can smoke a cigar for an hour, 90 minutes, and it's still you. If you go out drinking or doing other things for an hour, 90 minutes, it's not you anymore, right? And so that's what's also really cool is you can get in the car and drive home, and so it's
Great.
When you're having those business conversations, it's you 100% of the time.
I think you nailed it. There's such a false version of ourselves that we often present. When we're at parties, when we're at get-togethers of some type, when alcohol's involved, we're trying to be someone to connect with something. Mm-hmm. And when you're in those intimate spaces like that at a cigar lounge, we have our office converted to a cigar lounge. You're able to really have all the walls drop and the authenticity of the person starts to come out.
Without a doubt. So when you're having these authentic conversations, and you've been doing this for a while now, when you see somebody trying to grow their business, how do you recommend they balance between that growth, that profitability, and then also the balance between their quality of service and just their quality of life? Like how?
That's a great question. I'm going to kind of go around and then back to the center of
All
it.
right.
What I've found is this: when people find me or they get a referral, there is what they want, and I'm trying to provide what they need. Often they're trying to get an answer to an economic problem, profitability issue, streamlining their strategy. So for us, the license I use is called Scaling Up, and we look at 4 major components, which is people, strategy, execution, and cash. They never want to look at people, and they never want to talk about execution. They only want to talk about money, or they want to avoid the money conversation, just talk about strategy. Mm-hmm. And so what I found is we'll come with just that generic approach of the area that they're thinking they want, but really getting down to the main area that they need. So when people are talking about growth, we look at all those factors at the same time. And I've found this, we use this term success, and often when I come in to speak for a company, I'll give this basic talk. Everybody has a picture of what success looks like. It's this picture of a 7-figure income, a massive house, a nice car. But the reality is when we achieve that dream, we continue to shift what that definition of success is once we achieve it, because people really aren't after just achievement, they're after fulfillment.
Yep.
So when we really try to find the true need of what that person is, it often comes down to the things they've been avoiding or they feel insecure about. And most of the time, it's relational dynamics with their team that we're addressing 9 times out of 10. That's the inhibitor of growth.
So it's people is the biggest inhibitor?
Every time. So a few years ago, I was at a business conference. They said, what's the one thing that you do better than anybody else? So we're talking about superpowers and things you've accomplished and achieved. And you have people there that are doctors and PhDs. As I started to add up my life and what I did uniquely, ever since I was 19, I've been working with people solving their problems. I started as a youth advocate for troubled teens. So I'm now 41. Between 19 and 41, I've had over 10,000 one-on-one meetings with people. So for me, my expertise is reading people and identifying the issues that they're confronting. And every time it's a people problem. So I'll walk in, I'm doing the assessments. And everybody, when I'm starting to work with employees, personally, we'll do a basic general assessment with the CEO, with their team. When we start to work through it, all these employees come with their task lists, their to-do lists, and I'm trying to find what they've been avoiding. Often it's the real work. In modern day, we love to look busy, but there's really no substance to our busyness.
Yes. And so when somebody, how do you handle the people equation? Because I've heard of traction, EOS.
Yeah, all those things are great.
Stuff.
Yeah, so EOS, scaling up, lots of different systems. A lot of them really come down from this book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. You have all these evolved models that have come. There's just the basic 4 tenets, which again is that people, strategy, execution, and cash. So when you're starting to assess people, you're working through, I'm trying to find the underlying story. And most of the time when an entrepreneur comes, and they have this idea for this business, they gather anybody they can that's breathing, that's alive, that has energy, and you're doing this giant collection, just like you're pioneering a city. But you reach these choke points or stuck points where the company growth will be faster and greater in the complexity of the problems and will outgrow the competency of that individual. So you continue to carry these individuals that are not competent in what you actually need them to do, and that's the hard conversation that I bring. Now, I'm not brutally honest all the time. Again, Jim Collins is a great principle, and one of his books, I think it's How the Mighty Fall, is confronting the brutal facts. That was good to great. Confronting the brutal facts. So you have to really confront those things that you've been avoiding. And what we tend to do for people on our teams is we do a disservice by evolving their job roles just to keep them around because we like them, but we actually stop their professional growth. When we've avoided those hard conversations, they should really be in another career or in another industry.
So if you hired your mother-in-law as your bookkeeper originally, right?
I can't tell you how many times that's the case.
Are you serious? I just made that up.
That one. This is how it goes. Husband and wife. The husband starts the business. The wife starts the business. They hire their spouse. And then somebody's parent is always a bookkeeper. I guarantee it. And the books are often the problem. So the other 3 core tenets of business, which are sales, operations, and finance. Anybody who starts a business is very rare that their strength is operations. It's always sales. And so they can gather, they can sell, but then you have an efficiency problem or a process problem, which falls in operations. And what do? The finances fall by the wayside. So for me, I'll come in, I'm trying to help companies scale to sale, right? So we're helping them develop to sell their company ultimately. And even if they don't want to sell, I say, run your company like you want to sell.
Yep.
And if you're there, you always have an exit plan or you're always the most profitable. We tend to let things go. We let our belt out. It's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner, right? You just keep eating. It's like, oh, it's the holidays. Well, people live their business like that. They just spend money here. They do it here. But then lean times come and they're not prepared to pivot. And so when you live in a lean model all the time, and again, you splurge when needed, you can easily pivot when obstacles come your way.
So an example would be like a real estate agent growing a business. They, at one point, in order to have a sellable asset, that business has to operate without their sales numbers. Sure, it's easy for you. It's the gravy. But if that's how your business is staying alive,
100%,
then then things need to change. You need to fire that bookkeeper.
And that's one of the first things when I'm working with real estate agents. I don't do as much anymore. You were one of the first I work with. I work pretty much exclusively with the commercial brokerage now. But when I'm working with them is, again, I love agents as people. They're some of the most frustrating business owners I've ever worked with.
What makes you say that?
Well, I think the problem is it's much like the used car mentality. They view houses like selling cars. And so they approach it like a hobby or a passion project, not like a business. So whenever you're coming into a business, we do something called the functional accountability chart. What are the major functions of your business? Sales is going to be one of those. But they forget all the other aspects. There's this finance, marketing, process, operations, all those, et cetera. And so we say, which one are you going to fire yourself at first? And real estate agents are the worst at firing themselves. They think they can do everything because they keep thinking, if I save this, I save this, save this. So one mentor told me, we step over dollars to pick up a dime. And so they're constantly avoiding the hard thing. And the other reality is critical disciplines. They could be some of the most undisciplined people I've come around.
No.
Where they're constantly missing meetings or they're forgetting this or double booking because they think they can be all things to all people.
Yeah.
And they're not able to laser focus. Why I've loved working with you and why I've continued to work with you is you're one of the most disciplined people I've ever met. Just genuinely. You have hyper focus in a good way, not in an obsessive way, but you have a determined goal. Part of it, though, that we try to work on with guys like yourself, we can let into your sessions a little bit, is that optimism of entrepreneurs that I've noticed is contagious. Is guys like you and I, we're very linear in our goal setting.
Yep.
So we can say, okay, I'm at this, gross revenue. I want to be to this gross revenue in a year. And we make these incremental steps. But what happens is we think we can become superhuman. And instead of eliminating things from our plate, start to add things to our plate, and it slows us down. Just think about somebody going on a hike up a mountain, climbing Half Dome, for instance, in Yosemite. You don't keep adding things to your backpack to get to that summit. You often have to let things off. It's the same thing for your business. And I've found the most successful entrepreneurs I work with are often these, we call them expressive organic. They're these true creatives. They say, hey, we're at 2 million this year. Next year, we're going to hit 15. And I think there's no way possible. And it's that resilient, eternal optimist that they live in that they hit it. I have one guy literally last year, we hit 2 million gross revenue. So what are our goals? I'm thinking, okay, let's target 4 for this next year. And he said, we're going to hit 10 million. Right now, they're at 10 million. It's like the end of Q3. They'll probably hit 13 or 12 million by the end of Q4.
Wow. And so we have had some interesting conversations about that optimism, but circle back to real estate agents really quick. There's a phrase that I have just been refocusing on, and it is the bill always comes due. The bill always comes due, whether it's in marriage, whether it's in health, and whether it's in business. So you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. Well, that bill is eventually going to come due.
Yeah.
You're going to be a burned up, broke, 70-year-old real estate agent, or maybe you pay that bill. And here's the thing, too. The longer it takes to pay the bill, the more interest there is on it. So the longer 100%. It takes for you to make those corrections in your business, the heavier that bill is at the.
So what I've noticed in particular with that bill coming due is, again, we're a caffeinated society. We opened up talking about cigars and nicotine, caffeine, etc. But we need stimulants, and I think the true addiction that we have in our modern culture is anxiety. And what happens is, again, most of the time I'm working with people. I just did a conference in Vegas. What are the things you're avoiding? We're so used to the adrenaline of anxiety that we avoid the problems we know we need to confront or the business issues that we let pile up. They always say this, I do really well working at the 11th hour. I do really well working when there's only a few, the deadline's near. What we're doing is we're tapping into the fuel of anxiety. And the reality is that's a bad fuel. It's an expensive fuel. It's a cheap fuel. Ultimately, it burns too quick. And really, the fuels we need to run from are attention to detail, which we absolutely hate, and then having that ambitious action, right? The action where we're not delaying things, we're tapping into the fuel of active action all the time. Tony Robbins still calls it massive action. So from that's really where I think we can have true success with real estate agents in particular, is helping them detox from the addiction of anxiety.
Interesting. Detox from anxiety. I don't know, it's giving me shakes just thinking about it.
There you go.
But so back to that optimism thing, though. So if we're detaching from the anxiety and we're leaning into that eternal optimism, how for example, that company that did 2 million and is now maybe going to do 12 or 13, how did optimism play? Like what role did optimism play in that?
These business owners have insatiable belief. They just do. They tap in. I don't want to get too woo-woo on this. It'll be a longer conversation. I have a very extensive faith background. But I've noticed a lot of these guys say either God or the universe just brings these people into my life. And as they confront fears in their own heart, all of a sudden, these things show up. So for instance, I gotta be careful because these people live in our city. But I have this one particular client, incredibly successful. He is one of those that has a new business idea every day. So I met him originally. I'd heard somebody had bought a safari camp in Africa at the gym we were at. I thought, what guy's lying, and who buys a camp in Africa? I've done work in Africa. It's incredibly difficult to work any type of business remotely. Sure enough, I meet him. He ends up becoming one of my clients. This is the guy where he says something and it happens. So he comes back from Africa this last summer, and he has a million ideas and 5 other businesses he wants to do. And we're whiteboarding. He says, what we're going to do is we're going to start a safari camp. I said, well, we already have a camp. He's like, no, a travel company. We're going to start a safari travel company. He starts showing me numbers. I'm like, these numbers are insane. I'm like, how are we going to solve these? He's like, it just so happens that we have a guy on our team that used to run these camps and used to run these safaris. And he's going through, and he's honest. I've worked with him now long enough to know that he's not making stories up. He's like, what we need is the top salesman for safari ventures and travel. I said, how are you going to find this person? He's like, we're just going to find it. We literally write it down. 2 weeks later, he says, you won't believe who I met. I said, who? He's like, well, I'm in the American Express lounge over in Tennessee, and these ladies walk up to us as they're waiting for their flight. We start talking to them. Turns out they run a safari travel company, and they're the top bookers for all of the world for these luxury different ventures and hotels, and now we're working with them on booking this safari travel company. I just could not even believe it.
Wow. So he had the vision, he had the goal, and then he bumped into them at an airport.
Literally, every time. That type of optimistic magnetism, it just blows my mind every moment.
Here's the thing, though, that I'm taking away from this, and hopefully the people listening to this are as well, is they're tapping into. So, for example, I like to play the lottery. Every now and then I like to go buy a lotto ticket, and I just dream, what would I do if I won the lottery, right?
Yeah.
And but every single time I buy the ticket, I feel a little guilty. Honestly, I feel a little guilty, not because of like religious reasons or gambling or anything like that, but I feel a little bit guilty because I've already won the lottery in where I live, in my having my health, and who I'm married to, and the health of my 2 boys. Like, there's a lot of things going good for me that money could not buy. And so I feel a little guilty in winning the lottery. And so when I'm hearing that optimism, when I'm hearing you talk about the Amex Lounge and randomly bumping into people, I'm hoping agents or people listening to this are thinking, rather than, oh, that never happens to me or that's not true, think about the times that it did happen to you.
Love that. So again, confronting those limiting beliefs.
Yep.
So as I'm doing conferences, we have a mastermind in Scottsdale here in November. A big portion of that is confronting these limited beliefs, or I say the stories we've told ourselves all these years. I've found with these entrepreneurs and these optimists is they've confronted these limiting stories and they're believing a better one. So here's the actionable takeaway for this is you have to have a vivid vision. One of my mentors told me it's a vision that's so clear that you think about, you can picture it, you can taste it, and then start writing down what you need. Most of the time we never write down what we actually need because we say that's impossible. I'll never have that. Already telling ourselves the stories of limitations.
Yep.
Right? So for us, one of the first steps is you are the sum total of your 5 closest friends.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with people that have the same type of inspiration and belief. I love the story of Thomas Edison. Whether I know it's true or not, I choose to believe this one. And my dad would tell me this when I was young. His mom one day is working with him. Thomas comes home, and the teacher gave him a letter, hands it to his mom. The mom reads it and says, son, you're so smart that the teacher said you no longer can be taught at school. I'm going to teach you. So she raises this genius that we now know is the inventor of the light bulb. Well, supposedly when she died, he was gathering her things and in a desk drawer found that letter. And it was a letter from the teacher stating that your son is stupid, he's distracted, and he's not fit for the classroom.
Oh my gosh.
So think about this. Whether it's true or not, I don't care. I want to believe that it's true.
The principle's true.
So the influences we surround ourselves often determine our success. And this actually was proven in this test where we had teachers, they took these IQ tests and they handed them out to all the students. They brought them back. They then told the teachers who the gifted kids were. What the teachers didn't know is that they actually weren't gifted at all. It was the ones with lower scores and some with the mediocre scores. They found out just the attention of the teachers during that semester brought their grade point and IQ test up significant amounts.
Because they were treating them like they were smart.
They were treating them like they were successful, like they were special. Those you surround yourself with really determine your success in a lot of different ways. I don't know how we got off on that tangent, that being said.
No, I love it.
I think it was a good one.
I love it. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about more tips and tricks and hacks on how to grow your real estate business and scale.
Mike, it feels so good when you get over-the-top great service.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You just want to become a repeat customer for life. For instance, Betty, she worked with our good friend Johnny Jennings and his team at Made for More Realty to sell her home. They did such an amazing job that when it came to sell her mother's home in Roseville, she couldn't think of anyone else to work with. But of course, Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty. They found the perfect buyer for their mom's home and negotiated a quick as-is sale.
And if you want to sell your home but not go through that whole process of showing it and open houses and all of that stuff, you could get at least 3 cash offers when you call Johnny Jennings and Made for More Realty. And you're going to experience that same great customer service because they have a full staff dedicated to making sure that your home selling process is the easiest and most efficient it could be, which is why they have almost 800 5-star Google reviews, and they've been voted the #1 team in Roseville for the last 3 years. Expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 198-2171.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So today on the show, we have special guest Brandon Naramore. He's a business coach. What's it called? Generosity?
Very close. Generous Inc.
Generous Inc. And tell you what I love about that name is you have to live up to it. You do in spades. And so every time I meet Brandon for a coaching session, he's got some cigars and some coconut water.
That's right.
And those are my love. What is it? The 5 love languages?
That's it, man.
Right? 2 of mine are cigars and coconut water.
Everybody's is gifts deep down. As much as they say they don't like gifts, that's one of the things that stands out.
Yeah, and there's personal gifts. They're special to us. But back to, so what we've been talking about is how business owners, real estate agents can grow their business and bottlenecks and choke points and things, and even psychological barriers that they have to overcome. If you were to blindly walk into an agent's business, what is the one thing that you would anticipate needing to fix first?
So again, as I'm assessing the situation, I'm not going to come with what needs to change immediately. Because it's often the things we don't want to hear. But every time it comes down to mindset.
And what do you mean by mindset?
So your ability to focus and believe for what's ahead, and this, again, abundance mentality will determine the success of your business. Most business owners lead from a place of scarcity.
Yeah.
And so these limiting beliefs or limitations around them, they never have enough. And I would say, going back to those other entrepreneurs and CEOs, the abundance mentality is 9 times out of 10 there. Sometimes their focus can just be strictly profit, and it can be disguised as abundance mentality, but the motives are wrong. But I say most of the time, the pure motives of abundance mentality is the ones that have the most profitable companies.
So how does somebody transition? Because I'm just mentally going through my brain and thinking about Steve Jobs started in a garage and then grew it. Amazon was working on doors as desks.
Oh, the Jeff Bezos picture is one of my favorites. So literally on my desktop, I have everybody when they were young, when they started. Mm-hmm. So I have a picture of Steve Jobs when he's working in the garage. I have a picture of Elon working at this computer. I have a picture of Jeff Bezos with this hand-sprayed painted sign that says Amazon.com that's falling down. It's the most incredible picture. And that's where we all have humble beginnings. Now, what these people become, we can't determine that, but we can look at their origin story and learn from it. And so many of these people, they had this relentless optimism. They had a mindset of growth. People don't often know the original story of Steve Jobs, where most of these people that pioneered and changed the world, they weren't the first.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you and I have talked about
even
this.
Elvis, right?
They were the second or the third.
Yep.
Right? So these true innovators are actually the ones that don't make the most money. It's the early adopters of that technology. Mm-hmm. So Steve Jobs, he wasn't a computer analyst. He was a designer. He was an artist. And so he gets his hands on this computer called the Kennebec, and from that says, hey, I think we can make something. Calls his friend Steve Wozniak, who worked for Atari, and from that they create this thing, and in the first couple years create $1 billion company. Now, I often lead this talk and say, who's the greatest salesman that's ever lived? Everybody says all these different names. It's Steve Jobs. Steve was the greatest salesman that's ever lived. Now, technically, we can call it Elon because it's different. But Steve Jobs changed the world through that type of optimism. Again, behind the scenes, you read his book, he was a tyrant to be around.
Yeah.
But his persona, I believe that was integrated, was somebody that was incredibly optimistic.
So when somebody is not optimistic, how do you recommend they make that transition into being more optimistic?
So again, when we look at the definition of success, success just means outcome. That's all the word means. So it's desired expectation or outcome. So you start to target your aim. So what I have people do is I call it 52X success. I say every week, what if you started to do these 3 questions? Number 1, outcomes. What do you want? Number 2, opportunities. What's ahead? Number 3, obstacles. What's in the way? So if every week you wrote down, okay, this is what I want, 3 different things in 3 different areas. You see, these are the opportunities ahead that you're training your brain to start to find opportunities. They're around you all the time. There's a great book called The Happiness Advantage. He talks about the lucky test. And so within this, they had this magazine where they had all these different shapes and things. And they found out that the people that had the growth mindset were the ones that found the most shapes in this magazine through this counting test, right? So you start to look, if you look for opportunities, you'll find opportunities. If you look for obstacles, you'll find obstacles.
Interesting. So why do you have them write down the obstacles? Just to be aware of them, or?
Because avoidance.
Okay, avoidance.
Right? And so when you actually confront a fear and name a fear, it gets a lot smaller.
Yep.
See, we always have these monsters in the closet in our head where it's a lot bigger than it actually is. You know, I had that same, I have monsters in my closet too that I have to confront all the time. Mine was the tax guy, right? So I was avoiding this tax conversation. In my head, I'm like, oh, it's going to be this massive bill, massive bills, massive bill. But sure enough, when I have the conversation, it wasn't that much.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad. It's never as bad as we think it is. And so when we start to confront those obstacles, we push through them or find other ways around them. Opportunities are obviously often on the other side.
So you talked about writing them down. Something that I am starting to do as well, even if it's something as simple as a family gathering, or like if I'm going out to coffee like with Valerie, is verbalizing out loud what I want the outcome to be.
Love that.
Like just writing it down helps clarify it, but then saying it, there's something about speaking something into existence that makes it much more tangible than it was simply written down. And so
I think it's the both and, right? So
Yeah.
we think, I think Stephen Covey talks about the either or, so does Jim Collins. But the both and, what's the think win-win is what we're trying to find. So when you write and say it, it's powerful. It puts accountability in action as well. That's why the importance of healthy friendships. You don't want people around you where when you share your visions, dreams, and goals, they obviously often think of what's in the way or how you're not going to achieve it, or are secretly motivated by jealousy, where they're going to try to sabotage that dream for you.
Yeah. So step 1 is identifying what your goals are, what you want out of that, and writing those down weekly, if not daily. And then step 2 sounds like doing an audit of those people around you. Are they feeding into that?
Man, the friend audit is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But so valuable. So I think of it as, who are my true friends or companions? Who's at your round table, right? So we have the long table and the round table. I don't want long table friends. I don't want friends where someone has to be positioned in the place of dominance at the end of the table where everybody sees them as the authority. I want a table of peers where I'm able to see and look at everyone eye to eye and extract value and learn from and grow from, right? So who's at your round table that's safest, right, around you? And they have to be people that inspire you. So every year, guess what happens? My relationships transition.
Absolutely.
Right? So they happen all the time. So when those people transition off that round table, I think to myself, I don't want them to become an enemy. I want them to be an ally. I want them to be an acquaintance, right? So what we tend to do is we get very binary. We say, they're no longer my friend, and we try to cut them off. No, they can still be a part of your circle. They're just not part of your inner circle, right? So for me, whenever I sign on a client, I recognize what role they're casting me in. Most of the time, those I work with can be 20 years my senior. And so from that...
That's what I am.
Whatever. What I recognize is they're casting me in a role either as their younger self or their son, right? So I'm positioning myself as the son they wish they had, or as the version of themselves they wish they once were, or now wish they were, right? So from that, I'm stepping into it. But from that, a friendship forms as I birth it out of authenticity. People like yourself become my real authentic friends.
Love that. And so... To bring this full circle back to the initial conversation of people growing in their business, they've maybe hired on the mother-in-law to do bookkeeping. Mother-in-law is going to be your mother-in-law, right? Yeah. She's just not going to be in the bookkeeping role. So if you have people around in your round table, they're still going to be in your life. They're just not going to be that initial thing. And so Valerie and I have become more like we always thought we were pretty focused on this, but even more so, it's the people that, like you said, inspire us and also who we feel safe around. Because when you're sharing the problems that you're going through in life or the goals, sometimes that's the worst part, is when you share your goals and they get slapped down, or you hear why it can't work or all these different obstacles. That robs us of the optimism that you were saying and that we agree about is key to success. And so being around people who are safe and optimistic and they're there to support you have honestly been a huge, gain in our life. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I enjoy working with you, is because every single time I walk out of the office and I call Valerie, as soon as I get in the car, I call Valerie. I go, Valerie, I freaking love that guy. I had so much fun with Brandon. And so, just thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. It's been a huge honor.
Well, that wraps up our time together. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So you can email Brandon at generousinc.com or go to generousinc.com. We give you the business evaluation test and show you the health of your company.
Love it. And if you have any questions and want to talk to me one-on-one about Brandon, feel free to reach out. Just go to madeformorerealty.com. Say, hey, I want to talk to Johnny about Brandon, and I'll have an honest conversation about why I enjoy working with this guy. Thanks so much for being on the show, Brandon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mike, I am so jealous of our neighbors. They are retired, so they have all this free time to do work on their backyard and go on these awesome vacations. But of course, they had to save up for that. Just like Jessica and Brian, they were selling their home, retiring out of state. They needed to make the most money possible on their home because a large portion of their retirement funds was tied up in the equity of their house. Of course, they reached out to Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty. They were able to get them an offer $35,000 over list price and help them make a smooth move out of state.
Yeah, so if you need to sell your home, whether it's for retirement or maybe you need to upgrade or downsize, Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty can help. Plus, you can get at least 3 cash offers when you reach out to Johnny Jennings with Made for More Realty. They have an entire staff dedicated to helping make your home selling process the easiest and most efficient it can be, which is why they've been voted the #1 real estate team in Roseville for the last 3 years. So expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team at Made for More Realty. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 198-2171.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So, Johnny, I have some friends, and they're out shopping for a home. They're doing a bunch of showings with their realtor, and they show up to one house, and it's late at night, around 9 o'clock. It's dark outside. They open the door and go in. None of the lights work, and the realtor doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like the kitchen lights, the hall room lights, none of the lights are going on. Obviously, the security alarm is not turned on. So they call up the realtor of the person who's selling the home and say, hey, what's going on? And she goes, oh, they turned off the power. Sorry, I forgot to tell you about that. Can you come back another day? And so my friends, they're all bummed. They were looking forward to seeing this house.
Yeah.
And so you know what they do? They don't leave. They pull out their phones. The wife, the husband pull out their phones. The realtor pulls out their phones, and they turn on the flashlight, and they go to look at the house with their phones.
Man.
So they're going through the kitchen, they're going through the bedroom, they're going through the backyard with their flashlights, hoping that none of the neighbors call the cops.
Oh, that's a good point.
That somebody's trying to rob the house.
Squatters.
How do you not leave the power on, though, especially if you're selling the home?
No.
Like, is that a precaution that people make if they've sold their, or if they've moved out of the home, right? They obviously unsubscribe to the newspaper, the magazine, stop Amazon delivery. Do they stop lawn care? Do they turn off the PG&E and the Wi-Fi and the internet?
So there's so much here to unpack. First of all, why are your friends looking at houses at 9 o'clock at night?
That's when their availability. It was a long day, and they wanted to look. They wanted to pack in as many homes as possible. So it's dark out, and so they're looking at the home.
So what I would recommend to people who are out looking at homes, one, limit it to 5 a day. I know you're trying to maximize the amount of time, but the houses after 5,
they look all the same.
They all look the same. You can't remember which one's what, and then you're going to end up going back and visiting it again to make sure it's the right house. So did you really save any time?
Right.
So, and then of course 9 o'clock at night, how are you going to look at the exterior of the home? Even if the utilities and stuff were on, like how do the eaves look? Is there any dry rot along the base? Like how do the fences look? Like it is a good idea to drive by, like do a drive by at night and just check out the neighborhood.
Right.
But 9 o'clock at night's a little late. And then as far as the utilities. This is a question we get all the time. Like, it's just basically part of our listing presentation before we leave the house, or as we're like, I want to make sure that they know this stuff because it's come to bite us in the rear many, many times. And so what you need to do if you are considering selling your home, or if your house is on the market, you need to keep the utilities on. You need to keep the water, the gas, everything
the internet?
on. You don't need the internet.
No,
on.
okay.
Because here's this.
What about lawn care? What about landscapers?
Keep it all going. Keep it all going, because
that can be expensive if you're not living in the house.
It can be, but it's going to end up here. Here's the reason why. If the pool turns green, it's going to be way more expensive in that buyer's mind to turn that pool from green to clear than it would if you had just paid the extra $100 to keep the pool, the service going. Same thing with the lawn. And then as far as the utilities go, those have to be on for the buyer to do their inspections. How are they going to see if the stove's working? How are they going to see if the AC is functional? How are they going to see if the heater's working? If all the utilities are off. So those have to stay on. And then another question we get. So this is kind of like as far as showing the home.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
I heard from an older couple that we knew that lived on their street when they were showing their house, and they wanted to turn off the electricity because they were concerned that all the realtors and people traipsing through the house would leave the lights on and leave stuff
the AC on.
Yeah, and they were concerned that would. So they wanted to run over to the house, turn off the circuit breakers, and then turn them back on. But I know it sounds silly, but especially if you have older folks who are concerned about those kind of things.
Well, if you're concerned about that, just voice that to your real estate agent, and then it's up to them to make sure that is emphasized with the people showing the property.
Yeah.
And then if you're going back over to turn off the power to the house, turn off the breakers, why don't you just turn the lights off?
Yeah, it's true.
I don't understand why you're killing the breaker.
Well, sometimes when you're older, you have a little bit more nerves and fear of things.
Absolutely.
It's still their home, and it makes sense. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I'm not making fun of them, but that makes, because again, when somebody's driving through the neighborhood, before they even get to your house, they're making a snap judgment. Do I want to live here? Then they pull up to the house, they're making a snap judgment on just the outside. And then they walk in the door and they can't turn the lights on. And that all of a sudden the emotion is falling.
Yeah. And I had mentioned to them too that you might want to leave the porch light on, maybe leave a hall light on.
Yeah.
So, people don't think that the home is vacant, because you've had tons of stories where people come and they squat in the home because they know it's vacant.
Well,
I've heard lots of stories like that.
I wouldn't say I have tons of stories, but there is one
Some
story.
Some of your relatives have done that, right?
Yes. And so, but the other thing too is make sure that you're keeping your mortgage current. Or if you don't have a mortgage.
Do you have a choice?
Some people are like, hey, I'm selling the house, or hey, it's in escrow. I don't want to make the next mortgage payment. You have to make the next mortgage payment. You're going to mess up a whole bunch of stuff in the process. And you still have to pay the mortgage.
Right.
Or let's say you don't have a mortgage and you say, hey, I don't want to pay the property taxes because they pay twice a year. I'm not going to be here for another 6 months. Why am I paying all of the property taxes? Yeah, I get that. It'll be prorated to you at the close. So you'll get that money back. So make sure that your utilities are on for the inspections, and just to make sure that everybody feels comfortable about it, that all the services that you're paying for, if it's pool, if it's lawn, make sure those remain intact, and make sure that your loan and everything is up to date. So those are questions we get regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people aren't sure,
Yeah,
Obviously, they don't want to pay two bills. They've moved into another house. They're paying PG&E and SMUD or electric, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to do it twice. And
one of the great things.
tricky.
One of the great things about hiring a real estate agent is the whole reason why you hire a realtor is for them to save you and or make you money, right? That's where their value is. And so when you're hiring this person, make sure you're listening to them, because if you say, hey, screw it, I don't trust the realtor, I'm gonna skip this month's mortgage payment and then I'll figure it out at closing, that's gonna end up costing you more money, right? And so just please, if you hired the person, make sure you trust them enough to listen to their advice.
I have another question. So I've seen a number of movies where the realtor goes over to the house and does a lot of the cleaning, like cleans up the yard, will do some cleaning of the house. Is that their job? Is that their responsibility when you become the real estate agent for someone selling their home? Does it become your job then to do the upkeep for the home while it's vacant and you're selling it?
I love that question. So we do provide services that assist with that, but does your dentist, let me put it this way, does your doctor take the trash out of his office? Probably,
Sure.
probably
Oh,
not.
oh, okay.
He's probably got somebody that's helping him with that because that's not the highest and best use of his time. Do you want your realtor, instead of out finding you buyers or out searching for that best home, that home for you, the replacement property, do you want them pulling weeds in your backyard? Right? That's probably not the highest and best use of that person's skills. And so, can they provide services like that? So we just paid for a guy to have his tree trimmed. Right? It was touching. So if a tree or bushes or anything is touching a house, that's an issue with the pest inspections. Like it cannot be touching the home. And so he knew that, we knew that, so we trimmed the tree for him. No cost to him. He's like, how much is it going to cost? And we said, nothing. We're paying for it.
Oh, really? You paid for it?
So we paid for it, yeah. And so as far as it being the realtor's job, that's up to the individual realtor and the client to decide, hey, this is what we expect out of this process. But as far as it being the realtor's job, I would steer clear from having your realtor focus on those activities because those are more low-paying activities. Those are activities you could hire a cleaner, you can hire a gardener for, but it's really hard to find somebody who is good at social media marketing, who's good at digital marketing, who can promote your home, and that's what the realtors should be focusing their time on.
Right. But I think maybe you know some realtors where you get into that situation where you drive by the house and the lawn hasn't been mowed, leaves have fallen, so the leaves need to be raked. And maybe there's a bunch of mail or packages being piled up and just stuff.
Yeah.
You got to hire somebody to do that is what you're saying.
So you got to make sure that that's getting done. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's where it can lead to squatters. That's where it can lead to other issues. That's where like somebody's walking up and there's a pile of mail and they're wanting to see the house. That doesn't exactly inspire confidence. And hey, this is somebody. I want to live here. Right? If you see a stack of bills, it's not. If you walk into a model home, you're right here locally, and somebody like a new builder, and you walk into a model home, do you see a bunch of bills on the island in the kitchen?
Right.
No, it's not
see a
appealing.
bunch of real estate cards.
You see a bunch of real estate cards. And so to answer your question more directly, the role of the real estate agent is to help that client find the property if they're a buyer or sell that property and broker that transaction. That's their job. It's not to negotiate after the close of escrow. So let's say the house is sold and now there's an issue with the pool. And the seller didn't disclose it. The buyer didn't know it existed. Everybody's blowing each other up. The sale is closed. The realtor's job is done. Legally, we cannot step in at that point. A lot of people think, hey, well, you were so helpful during the process. Why can't you help me now? We were brokering a transaction. There was paperwork involved, over 100 pages of paperwork. There's all these regulations that are at play. That has now closed. The book is closed, and it's up on the shelf. We cannot pull that book off the shelf. That is where you need to go into arbitration, mediation, or hire an attorney. And so as far as what a realtor's core job is, it's brokering that transaction. You wouldn't so let's say you buy a car from a car dealer. You work with a salesperson. You buy the car, and then all of a sudden you have an issue with it. The AC goes out, the window stops rolling up, something happens. Do you go back to that salesperson to say, hey, you sold me a faulty car, or hey, you didn't tell me that this didn't work on the car, or do you go to a mechanic, right? It's a different industry at that point. It's a different service. So, of course, you can always reach out to us if there's any issue. We want to make it right, but legally we can't step in on your behalf because that's not what our license permits us to do.
All right, good info. Like it.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about guaranteed offers.
So, Matt, over the weekend, saw a family in my neighborhood packing up their U-Haul truck and moving out. They seemed very excited. I mean, I don't think our neighborhood's that bad, but they were just excited about what they were doing and the new beginnings that they had.
And did you pitch in to help out?
I definitely gave them a high five,
Wow.
which is what they were doing. But that's something that Jessica and Brian experienced when they were selling their home to retire out of state. They needed to make the most money possible because a large portion of their retirement funds was tied up in the equity in their home. And Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team were able to get them $35,000 above list price and help them make a smooth move out of state.
If you're thinking about selling your home, how would you like not one, not two, but at least 3 cash offers, no matter what kind of condition your home is in? That happens when you work with our good friend Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty. They guarantee to get you at least 3 cash offers. Again, no need to do any of those costly repairs on your flooring, your backyard. Oftentimes, sometimes it's in the same day. So expect more, get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 1982171.
This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by EXP Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
Matt, I'm sure you've heard these ads on the radio, and you've probably heard us talk about it before. But when you hear the term guaranteed offer, what does that make you think of?
It makes me think that you're pulling out your checkbook and that you're writing out an offer.
Showing up
That's
with
what I'm thinking. Because I see
briefcase
the
of money.
Right, a briefcase full of cash, $100 bills.
Yep.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking somebody showing up to their house, sliding over a briefcase and having them sign this paperwork, and then all of a sudden they hand over the keys. When I think guaranteed, that's what I'm thinking. Because
I
how
love
can you
that.
guarantee? How can you guarantee?
I love that. So in my mind, just to add some color to this, mink coat, gold chains, sunglasses.
Right.
You know, and
Guaranteed cash offer. Here you
guaranteed
go.
cash offer. Yeah. So, and what do you think the price is on that? Do you think it's like if the house is worth $500,000, do you think it's at $500,000? Do you think it's at $515,000? Do you think it's
For a guaranteed
$300,000?
offer, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's lower than market value.
Yeah. Okay.
When you say, because
Yeah.
usually, if you hear some kind of negotiation and say, oh, it's all cash, then oftentimes it's okay, we'll take less because it's all cash. It's a guaranteed, I don't know. That's just my thought. I have really no idea.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious because
That's why I'm asking you.
Because you hear it all the time.
Sure.
And so I know what it means, but people who hear it may not understand what it means. So when you're hearing guaranteed cash offer on the radio, whether it's from us or from anybody, eliminate the showings, hassle-free, close in 12 days or less, 21 days or less. What that essentially means is you're paying for speed. There's a cost there. You're not getting something for nothing. There's no silver bullet to this process. If you want to sell your money for the most amount, if you want to sell your home for the most amount of money possible, the best way to do that is to expose it to as many people as possible. The more exposure your home gets, the higher price you will receive. Full stop, end of story. And the best way to do that is by putting it on the market with a real estate agent. That's the best way to net the most amount of money. Even if you're paying the real estate agent, you're still making more money than if you went with a guaranteed cash offer. Now, who the guaranteed cash offers are for people who are paying for speed. Maybe they need the money. Maybe they're going through a financial hardship and they need the money fast. Maybe they are going through a divorce and they don't want to deal with the complexities of selling a home when two parties aren't getting along and they just want to be done. Maybe they are moving for work and they need the money from this home to buy their next place wherever they're going. Right? Essentially, there's some urgency there. Maybe the home was inherited and there's a bunch of personal belongings in there. It's in a state of disrepair, and the person doesn't have the ability to get the home show ready.
Sure.
And so again, you're paying for simplicity, you're paying for speed. That's what the guaranteed offer is for. And so when you're trying to figure out what does that look like in terms of money, that guaranteed offer can be as high as 85 cents on the dollar. Mm-hmm. That would be on the high side. So again, let's say the house is worth, so we'll say $500,000. So at $500,000, that's what it would appraise for. Once it's fixed up, ready to go, sparkling new home, you would expect, best case scenario, $425,000. And what I hear, and so people are like, oh my gosh, it's way lower. Or people are saying that's great because then I don't have to pay any of the fees.
Right.
And so baked into that number are the fees. So that includes the real estate agent fees. That includes the closing costs that you as a seller would incur, right? All those different things. It doesn't include necessarily taxes because I can't pay your taxes for you.
Right.
But basically all those fees are baked into that. So somewhere on the high end would be 85 cents on the dollar is what you can expect if your home is in show-ready condition. Does that provide any clarity on it?
To some degree, yes. So what am I getting when I am offered when I get a guaranteed offer? Explain the difference between those transactions.
Yeah. So the guaranteed, so everybody's familiar with the traditional sale, right? You pay the real estate agent, you have showings, maybe do an open house or two. People are coming through the home, you have to get out.
Put a sign on your house.
Put a sign on the house.
A lot of times you're doing a staging.
There's
right?
pictures on the internet. There's
Right.
3D tours. Like it's very honestly and like intrusive. Like, would you want pictures of your house available for everybody in the world to see?
Right, and you have to arrange for openings. Means doing something with your pets, arranging
Or your
family
kids.
situations. Right.
Yeah, or both. And so that's the more traditional route. The guaranteed route is, hey, this is cash offer on your home. No showings, no photos, complete privacy.
Do you do inspections?
Yeah, the depending on the price point, they'll do inspections just to make sure that there's nothing like lurking.
Sure.
But depending on the situation, the buyer may not even do inspections.
Oh, okay.
And so you can close on these houses like we've closed on them in like less than 10 days.
Right.
So you can get the cash really fast. And then what we can also do is we can also help you with moving expenses. So a lot of times people, again, they need the money fast because of some life event has brought them to this point. And so what we'll do is we can actually get them the cash so they can move into their next place before we've officially closed on the house. And then they get the rest of the money. So then that way, if they need help with moving expenses, then we can definitely help them with that.
Wow. Okay. So again, what are the type of people that might be interested in a guaranteed offer?
If you want a guaranteed offer, you are typically wanting speed and simplicity, right? Speed, simplicity, and privacy. Like some people are like, hey, yes, my house is beautiful. It's got white carpets. Nobody's even been upstairs. But I just don't like people walking through my house who I don't know. And so for that security and peace of mind, they'll go with the cash offer. Sometimes it's the house is in a state of disrepair and they don't want it
I'll do all the repairs and everything.
And they just don't want it on the internet. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is my daughter lived here. She was a hoarder and hooked on crack. Like, I don't want people seeing this house, And so it's like, boom, we'll just take it down, give them cash, and then 15 days or less.
Can anybody, is anybody available or qualified for a guaranteed offer?
Anybody can get a guaranteed cash offer across the board. We can totally give them that. And so if you're curious what that would look like, just reach out to us. Go to madeformorerealty.com, reach out to us, and we'll come out. We'll give you an idea of what the home is worth if you were to go on the market and what a cash offer would be.
How long does it take to get that guaranteed offer after you go look at the home?
So we can depending on the situation, we can give it to you on the spot. But if you want multiple offers, then give us 48, 72 hours, and we can get you multiple offers.
Wow, that's nice.
And
awesome.
if you decide you don't want to move forward with those offers, then you just go the traditional route.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah.
And
But again, it's not for everybody.
Right. If they want more info though, and you can talk to them about it, they just reach out to you guys at Made for More.
Madeformorerealty.com.
There you go.